Good morning, everyone. Wishing you all a beautiful day. And today is our day 3 with the breath exploration. Hopefully, you got a chance to watch or practice the exploration from day 1, where we were looking at the anatomical environment of the ribs, and on day 2 we were looking at the two perspectives. One is the flat bone, which is our sternum, and then we were looking at how the spine embraces the lungs through the ribs and then kind of connects to the sternum. And the relationship is that the spine is kind of taller than the sternum. If you remember that from yesterday, how this tall person hugging the shorter person idea, kind of a little flexion, a very light flavor of a flexion there, going this way to embrace the lung environment. And from day 1 to day 2, in the beginning of the class, we have been sensing the weather of the body. How does the body feel at that moment? Or if it's the morning, how does my body feel this morning? How does my leg feel? Maybe my leg feels good. Maybe my hip doesn't feel so good. Or different various informations. We may find different readings in different parts of the body. Just imagine that the body is a globe, and then the climate in the shoulder, the climate in the elbows, or the climate in the knees, so that if we can build a sense of acceptance that different parts of the body is going to give us different information, and learn to accept that from, or if our yoga practice can build that ability of accepting rather than trying to. Sometimes we have a tendency of trying to sweep everything under carpet, a tend of pretense. How does this happen? Is sometimes we add a lot of information on us. We tend to wear particular kind of clothes. We tend to behave in a particular way because we practice yoga, or we tend to put ourselves in a particular environment in the name of practicing yoga, or we tend to put ourselves in a particular group, a sangha. I'm not going to say right or wrong to that, but I'm going to definitely say that every action has a reaction. There is a circumstance, there's something that's going to be provided from all these different actions that we are going to go through, and right or wrong depends on where we are. So rather than trying to hide everything or add information to kind of block, it's like putting up makeup. No, not against that, but rather than hiding what the body is providing you, can we have a sense of, again, that big word, acceptance of how the body feels at that moment? So reading the body, I'm going to push the the comments, and good morning, I love you all, yeah, and reading how the body feels, and then accept how the body is at that moment. Okay, so I would like to start today's exploration, begin today's exploration again with that checking different parts of the body, or just going through, like scanning the whole body. Maybe some parts of the body you get left out, and that's fine, and some part of the body gets into your mental scan. And a question that came yesterday to me was about the way to breathe. This forceful like breathing. The question was, should I breathe in an energetic way? For instance, should I breathe? should I breathe in an energetic way? So I was thinking about it. Doesn't breath itself offers as energy? Breath itself is offering energy. So allow breath to offer the energy to this environment rather than um, we try to superimpose energy on the breath, like the breath is dull or the breath is weak and therefore I have to go like do that. Of course I am exaggerating, I may be exaggerating, or sitting in a particular way, keeping the chest lifted or keeping the diaphragm contracted or rolling the shoulders back, changing the environmental composition that's already there. So I was trying to get the student to understand that let the breath do the work. Anyways, breath offers life. Anyways, breath is going to offer us energy, and it is offering us certain amount of energy required on certain amount of environment wherever the body is at that moment. So breath is anyways going to offer us energy, so allow that to happen. Okay, so I'm sitting on the bed and I'm going to start checking the weather of my body, and from there we're going to go into some parts of sensing the ribs, the bottom ribs, and then sensing the sternum. And then today we're going to use the fingers to sense the sides of the ribs and see how that feels through this practice. Okay, so you could be sitting. In fact, a very comfortable position would be if you were lying on your back in a supine position, because then there is very less energy required to, number one, hold the weight of the cranium or keep the column of the spine erect, and all that energy could be offered to the mind to become observant of the breath. But I'm choosing to sit because I've been practicing the morning and I've been doing quite a bit of supine positions, and I finished my pranayama, so I feel like now I can sit up. My spine is kind of energized and I feel like I need to sit up. But if you feel that you've not done much and you want to explore just by lying down, go for it. It's a beautiful position, offering your body to gravity. Right. So let's close our eyes and lessen the dominance of the eyes. And when we close our eyes, observe what happens to the ears. Sometimes maybe the ears takes over. It kind of becomes the watchtower looking out for you. Not that you are in danger or anything, but just one sense becomes more sharper than the other. And if you sense that your ears is becoming dominant, observe the various vibrations that your ears is picking up. Just observing. We are not really translating anything. I could hear outside my door there is the health workers are pushing a cart. Not sure if they're cleaning up the corridor. Now I'm translating all of that, but let's just listen to the sound without making a storyboard. If that happens, allow it to happen. Now, from the ears, let's move on to observing the head. How does the head feel? And scanning your neck. And scanning your shoulders. You've got right and the left. Let's scan the arms. You've got the right and left too. And we scan your chest, the front of the chest, the back, the sides. Let's go down into the hips and the pelvic girdle. Let's go into the right side of the thigh, the knees, the right lower leg, feet. Let's go into the left side of the thigh, the knees, the left lower leg and the feet. We're clearly objectifying the body. You can clearly feel the body as an experience experienced by the mind. Like how the eyes experiences forms, shapes, and colors. In the same way can my mind perceive this body as an object. But not in a way that I'm rejecting this body. I'm not tagging that this body is mine or this body is not mine. But just knowing that this is a body. And then slowly, let's conclude by gently opening the eyes and offering our eyes forms, shapes, and colors. All right. Sometimes in our meditation practice or in our philosophical understanding, and the urge of wanting to understand the philosophy of the Vedic culture or yoga, which is the same, um, we put on this kind of a life jacket or parachute of trying to reject many things, because there is a tendency of yoga offering us a lot of removal of what you are not. And even in Advaita Vedanta, there is a lot of this idea of neti neti, removing, not me, not me. And we become self-employed warriors, suddenly wanting to, this is not me, this is not me. I think wait until there is some amount of maturity before we jump into certain conclusions of rejecting the idea of I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, I'm not this breath. Let's not rush into these ideas, although these ideas were offered to us by the rishis for a certain amount of maturity or to build certain amount of understanding. I think first, can we understand how we are this body, how we become this mind and breath, how have we become, what is the evolution of becoming this body? From that embryonic state, how did we become this body? From that embryonic development, how did we become this mind, and what is the composition of this mind, and how does this amalgamation or this integration of body, mind and breath happen, before even saying that I'm not this or rejecting this idea. Go slow on that. Yeah, not to rush on rejecting it completely, but learn to embrace it, because simply because from my own experience I feel that when you start accepting, because the body has the ability, the breath has the ability, the mind has the ability, they are all little maps and gadgets that can help us, free us from certain misunderstanding. The eyes in itself has the ability to help us gain some amount of focus. The nose, the ears, can we not use this body itself as a map to look for the consciousness which is supporting all of this? So let's not get into a rush to reject the body, mind and complexes, but rather use the body, mind environment to find out what I am or who I am. Now from here, let's go into the breath exploration. I would like to start with exploring the bottom ribs and the rhythm of the bottom ribs, how it horizontally expands or even vertically lifts and drops, whatever kind of information that you receive into your fingers. It may not be the way that I am sensing it, it just needs to be the way that you are feeling and sensing your breath at the bottom most part of the ribs. As you know that the top is like a dome, the top part is slightly smaller, generally this small, and then from there it's spreading like a dome out to the sides, and then you have that dome shape. So let's take our fingers and use our fingers like 10 stethoscopes and a thumb to hold both sides of the ribs, bottom ribs, and closing the eyes is an option. Before we begin directly moving into the breath offering energy or sensing the breath, let's start by feeling the first layer with our fingers, which is the fabric. I'm feeling my t-shirt with my fingers. And underneath that fabric is skin, underneath the skin is a very thin layer of flesh. And underneath the flesh is the ribs, the bone. And underneath the bone is the lungs. Now from the lungs, which is expanding and contracting as this body breathes, can I feel my breath from behind the ribs, from inside of the lungs? Therefore, it's a very discreet way of breathing. We are not looking for amplified, large, performance-like, audience-like movements. We're looking for more like forensic, like very intimate discovery of how the lung kind of expands as we inhale, that sense of fluidity. In the breath as we breathe in and as we breathe out. We're not looking for large movements. We're not looking for heavy, long inhalations or exhalations. And there are times where you're going to need to sigh a little bit, where you need to maybe take a longer breath. Maybe your lungs feel that you need to even pendiculate, or if you need to take a longer breath, feel free to do that. But try not to create anything like a pattern. And feeling the breath from behind the ribs. I'm going to slowly open my eyes and release my fingers. Now, let's feel the print of the breath now. Yesterday, I think day 1 we had observing the lower ribs. Day 2 we were sensing the breath in the flat bone, which is our sternum. Now today I would like to bring you into another environment. It is the side ribs. We're going to use our fingers and our thumb as stethoscopes to feel the side ribs. Let's begin with the bottom side ribs. Now if we go further down, you're going to sense the false ribs. There are 2 ribs that are hanging by themselves. Okay. Sometimes people who want to look thinner or slimmer or want to have that hourglass look, I was told that they cut those false ribs to have that hourglass kind of look. That's up to you what you want to do with your ribs. But if we go all the way down from here, let's say that from the xiphoid process from here, if we go all the way down, down, and then you're going to find, I found the last two ribs there. They hang by themselves. So I'm going to take my fingers there and see if I can sense my breath. Use the tip of the fingers. Kind of don't try not to push the ribs, but just like holding a fruit in your hands. You're not squeezing the fruit. So you're just touching the bottommost false ribs there. Or the floating ribs actually. And sense your breath. And sense the breath coming from behind or from inside of the lungs or from behind the ribs. So it's not like you're moving the ribs. It is the breath which is offering movement to the ribs. See if that helped you change your perspective. So you are not moving the ribs. It is the breath which is offering movement to the ribs. Now from there, let's move slightly higher. Once again, let this investigation of sensing the breath begin from the inside of the lung, which is behind the ribs. And try not to offer any movement coming from your muscular skeletal system. But see how the breath in itself offers movement to the ribs, the muscles, the skin. Therefore, it is an offering that comes from inside out. Let's take one last cycle. Maybe open our eyes and bring our palms down. Okay. Let's use our, for me it's going to be in my right hand. I didn't stipulate which hand. Feel free to use different hands. Somebody is knocking on my door. I'm going to check. Please stay with me. Yeah? You can पुराने वाले इसमें डाल। अच्छा ठीक। अच्छा ठीक है। हाँ पानी है। धन्यवाद जी। Sorry, I had to go out because the room service came. And it's very special, eh? All the workers are from India, so I kind of still get to use Hindi, polish my Hindi. So I just broke our exploration bubble. Oh, we can come back. The breath is very powerful. We can come back to this intimacy with the breath. So I'm going to use my right hand and sense the floating ribs. So let's start from the xiphoid process here, going down, down, down. Takes a while. If I go further down, I'm going to find the ribs. Did I find the floating ribs? Yes. Maybe you could move your body a little bit to find that. Yes, I found the floating ribs there. So because I was looking for it, I'm kind of pressing it. So try not to press it too much now. So you're not offering any pressure to move the ribs, but rather now like you're holding a fruit in your hand. You're just touching the floating ribs with your fingers. And sometimes we're kind of making a fist, or we are tightening the fingers or the center of the palms. Try to keep them slightly loose. In that curiosity of looking for that location, you may tighten the palms. Now I'd like to close my eyes so that my eye is not so dominant, so that my awareness can go through my arm. So I bring more awareness. The level of awareness increases in my skin right now, if that's a possibility. Now start exploring the movement of the in-breath and the out-breath. If it's pulsating the bottommost ribs, the floating ribs especially. And see if you can not get in the way of the breath by creating the movement. There's a tendency of that happening by trying to imagine a movement and producing the movement. There's a tendency of that happening in the nervous system. You try to imagine a movement and then you start creating that movement. That's a possibility. But see, after a while you can allow the breath to offer the movement into the ribs, and that you can use your fingers to sense that movement which is offered from the breath. Let's take one last cycle. And from here now, move the palm slightly higher. And it feels as if like I'm, my breath is offering movement into my right palm. It feels like that. And also feel free to understand that it is not a movement to be shown, or you're not showing someone this movement. So it's an intimate relationship that your breath may have with your ribs, or your ribs may have with your palms. Let's take one more cycle of the in and out breath. And let's bring our palms down. And observing the effect of that practice on the mind. If there's a little bit of a kick into the parasympathetic system, how does your vagal tone, what is the vagal tone right now? What is the core center of the system, the response system feel like? One way of checking is just to know if you're in the frontal lobe of your brains or if you're at the back of the brains. Generally, if you're the back of the brains, you're more introspective. Maybe staying there at the back of the brain. And feel this very intimate movement of the breath. Coming from behind the lungs. And offering the lungs very discreet movement. if there's any amount of control coming from your mind, if you could offer that back to the body and just become the observer of this environment called breath body. And also observing the space that you have within the body. And slowly, I would like to end. If you'd like to continue, you can disconnect the live and continue by yourself. Most of this sensing work is purposefully offered to all of you with the intention of trying to getting out of the way of the breath. Sometimes we have perceptions of how the breath should be. So I'm trying to offer us to get out of the way of the breath, so allow the breath to breathe. As you can see that the topic the last 3 days was let the breath breathe. Allow the system to happen, allowing the environment to happen, and to be there to support so that the environment can happen, and you could just observe all of that happening. And the second perspective, a reminder, is to not to pretend, to create a pretense of very discreet movement, but try not to make big movements, because I'm saying that simply because there aren't such natural big movements, unless if you're running, if you're doing something kicking into the sympathetic system, then you're going to have those large movements of the huffing and puffing of the breath. But naturally, as you're moving at home, or if you're taking a bath or you're cooking, you don't have these big movements. Rather, they are very subtle, intimate, discrete movements. So that is why I'm offering you to understand this very light movements and see if you can perceive this very light, intimate, discrete movements from this environment where we call pranayama. Because many times pranayama in the context of yoga tends to always be something we are not. It's always to do something different, to superimpose something which is not natural, to breathe in a particular different kind of way. Breathe here, breathe there. I'm not going to go against that. This whole video is not about proving what's right and wrong, but this is to offer to all of you that first, let's check the environment where we are in. What is the breath doing? What is the lungs doing? If we can embody and embrace that rhythm, what rhythm is the breath offering from moment to moment? And then from there, build a progressive and a safe practice of pranayama. Wishing all of you well, wishing myself well too. Have another 8 days more or 9 days more of quarantine, and I'll see you all tomorrow with another exploration, another part of the lungs, or maybe we can go into a little bit of movement of getting movement into the breath, so we can open up some parts of the lungs and see, or even I was thinking embryonic breathing, um, or even cellular breathing. Let's see. Yeah, love you all, take care. Om.